Welcome to Kim Talks Books. I'm Kim Hayden, your host. As we step into the quiet spaces between the lines, focusing on the vibrant author's journey, we'll explore the dedication, the inspiration, and the unique perspectives that these authors bring to their craft, offering listeners the profound reader's reward of discovering fresh narratives. So settle in, because our literary adventure with tomorrow's acclaimed writers begins now. Welcome back to Kim Talks Books. I am glad you're here. I love the fact that authors' interests and passions come in all forms. And that's the one thing that I'm really learning as I keep turning the page of this podcast to the next author, to the next passion. And I am excited to kind of dive into this because uh, it's a little bit different lens on a very common challenge for a lot of people. Welcome to the show, Armida. 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 Okay, let's start that over real quick. And I'm just going to take it to the minute mark. So cut front, minute, cut front. I even had it written phonically in front of me.
Not to worry.
Welcome to the show. I'm Kim Hayden, your host, and this is Kim Talks Books. I'm looking forward to our conversation today because it is a challenge that a lot of people face, but take it in a different perspective. You know, the art of language, a lot of us take for granted. Yet, when you're in a new place, new space, and you can't take it for granted, what are the challenges and who can you turn to? Armida, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
I'm looking forward to this. Here in Canada, we have a lot of new Canadians. In fact, in our production studio, one of the things we strive to work with is to ensure that we have an open and safe space that we can take in students and new Canadians and, help them acclimate faster, help them learn the language because we're in a speaking space, right? And empower them to learn a little bit more about North American culture and how better to learn than listening to all these amazing interviews. Take us a little bit through, first of all, introduce your book, and then take us through when you started the journey, when you thought that the need was there.
So my title of my book is Brave Loyalist Learns English. And interestingly enough, I had always loved to write, except that I never shared my writing with anybody except for my husband, because after 49 years, he was a safe space, right?
Yeah.
E- When I retired as a elementary teacher, I just in my mind, I envisioned myself just hiding away in my cocoon and just writing my little heart away and being completely content with life. That wasn't the case. It occurred to me that I might want to take a children's writing class. I'd never taken a children's writing class. I took a class, and actually, it's from Canada, the Miriam Laundry writing program. And I wrote my first book. And interestingly enough, though, another on side note, the book that I intended to publish, the editor kept having some questions about it. She just kept finding holes in the story. In my mind, I'm thinking, the story is great. The story is perfect. But recognizing the value that an editor brings, I had to finally put my book aside and think to myself, perhaps there was something else that I was supposed to be writing about, that maybe that one story that had my mom in it was not the story that the universe was waiting to hear.
Yeah.
So I started meditating and just letting go of my will, right? My strong will to publish that one story. And an experience is popping up. It was an experience that I had in first grade. And it was interesting because that was 69 years ago or 64 years ago. I kept thinking, where did that experience come from? But it was such a vivid experience. And the experience was first grade. The teacher has me recite my ABCs, because that's what first grade teachers do. I got stuck at G. the embarrassment and the shame that I felt. It was a new teacher, new school, new surroundings. Um, and the teacher's writing something on her tablet. And when I couldn't think of what came after G, eventually the teacher let me go back to my desk. I was humiliated. I was ashamed. I was embarrassed, thinking that now the teacher knew I wasn't smart. And everybody else in the classroom, they all seemed like they were smart because they were all smiling. Nobody was, walking around with a frown like me. And that moment put me in a space, a very negative space. Um, and I didn't know what else to do, but I did hear a little voice, and the little voice told me, "Okay, I'm gonna help you through this." And the little voice suggested, and I followed, that I just do the best that I could on my own without asking for help. Sounded like good advice.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that wasn't very good advice because I can't learn so much. I can only learn so much on my own. But academically, it put me behind in first grade, and then it just got rolling. I was a ball, like, I just fell into this hole where the more shame I felt, the more embarrassment, the more inclined I was to not ask for help, and that took me through 12 years of elementary school. I ended up reading at a 4th grade level when I graduated. The question always comes up, "Did you cheat?" And I tell people, "Of course I cheated." I was in survival mode. I cheated as much as I could, but not to get caught, right? But I mean, not that I was proud of it, but I just, at the guilt and the shame and the embarrassment and the low confidence, that was just kept building up year after year. And so I thought to myself, this is a story that I need to write as a retired teacher. I thought, oh my goodness, so many children encounter that experience still.
Oh,
With
yeah.
whether they're learning a second language or in our case, whether they're just learning English. English is not an easy language. And I saw that in the face of so many of my students.
Well, and that also, I mean, I look at it like my daughter's dyslexic. So, I mean, born to English, and it was a difficult language. And what's fascinating is that girls tend to pass much longer. And we didn't catch it until a lot of the psychological, like when you talk about the imposter syndrome, you talk about people misinterpreting language barriers for intellect level and how we internalize that. And a lot of that was a lot of that damage is done by the time you realize that there really is a challenge.
Yes.
Um, so, why do you think now is a good time for for these books? Why do you think now we need these?
Well, as I presented the book, the more I realized that this was one conversation that we were not having in our schools. And so it's not necessarily right at as much of a point as right now, but we've never really had this conversation in our schools with our children to bring to light the fact that we are lifelong learners. We will always be learning something new. And when you're learning something new and it becomes challenge, which oftentimes it there will be a little voice that will pop up in our head that will try to protect us and try to shield us from moving forward, right? That little voice will say, "You know what? This is prob this is one thing you're not going to learn. You're not smart enough. Move on to something else." And we need to have that conversation with children as early in their life, academic life as possible, to let them know that we as adults, we still have that voice when we're learning something new. So they're not alone, that voice pops up all the time,
Yep.
and how to recognize it, and how just a small little change in that thought at that moment can give us the opportunity to push through and stay with something until we learn it.
For those of us on the outside of somebody having these experiences, what are some of the things that we can look for to help support the person next to us? Who What could we have observed how could we have stepped in when, first grade you know, Armida was struggling, what could we have done? What could we have seen?
So I always think I tell teachers, when we know better, we do better. 65 years ago, when I was in first grade, it was a different time. And now we have a lot of support systems. It's really difficult for a child to fall um, under the what's the phrase? Under the through the cracks.
Through the cracks, yeah.
Through the cracks. It's different. It's A child will probably never fall through the cracks in our new systems that we have in place now academically. But back then, but even, back then, what probably the fact that I was just being very quiet, the fact that I wasn't raising my hand, that I was never asking for questions, that, it was evident by the work I was doing that it was less than, academically it was low. Those are all signs that were there.
Yeah.
But again, it was a different time. But nowadays, there's a lot of support systems. So, and children are very open. Like they'll say, "I can't do this. I'm not smart." I mean, they're verbalizing it, and
Yeah.
we, as adults, are often saying, "Oh, don't say that. You can do it. Just keep going." You know,
Sometimes we should listen, though. Sometimes we should listen because sometimes it is actually beyond their current capabilities.
yeah,
And I know we want to see the best and we want to be, use motivational language and all of this. But sometimes just stepping back and saying, okay, I hear you. How can I help you so you can learn to do that?
yes,
Um, so as mentioned earlier, in Canada, we have a lot of new Canadians, and a lot of them are moving here with young families. What are some of the strategies in the book that you talk about? Some of the things that you've done in your book that would benefit these, young parents coming here, and they've got first graders or second graders, and a lot of new Canadians are, they have degrees. They are very well educated. Their children are very intelligent, but then they come here and they end up with that roadblock of the language. What are some of the strategies in your book that you talk about?
so the main strategy is I talk about the fact that first of all is recognize and bring it the conversation to the table. Don't
Yeah.
minimize it. When a child says, "I can't do this," they can't. They're not saying that just to say it. They really can't. So breaking it down, I mean, we certainly don't want to minimize what they have to learn, right? And give them something easy, but breaking it down, right? Like, okay, let's break this problem down, you know, and let's start from a earlier stage. So just breaking a situation down so that the child and then give the child time to internalize each steps that you're walking through.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we as parents want to just give them the answer or just push through it and just, suck it up and, I know you're just playing and not focused. It's like, no, no, that's not it. Children really are being challenged and they all will be challenged because they're all learning something new. I have this little bracelet that I now give when I do presentations, and it says, "What are you thinking?"
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay. Tell me what the importance of that is.
There's millions of thoughts that run through our head throughout the day, and we oftentimes don't even think much about them, right? I mean, we can't possibly really give much attention to every thought that runs through our head. But yet, a lot of those thoughts are not serving us well. Right? A lot of those thoughts is, I'm comparing myself to the student next to me, and I can't write well, and I don't know how to spell a word, and I'm thinking of a child, right? Or even as an adult, right? A new Canadian coming to your country, right? And thinking, I just don't get it. I don't get how they are doing this, and they look over and their peers are just going through it like nothing, right? And those thoughts start running through their head, right? So we need to, throughout the day, ask ourselves randomly, what am I thinking? Like, what was that thought I just had? Was that thought something that was serving me well, building me up, or was it a negative thought? If it was a negative thought at that moment, switch it to a positive and then just move forward,
Yeah.
whatever the thought was. So just to so that we could get into a pattern or into a habit of checking in, what am I thinking? What am I thinking? And just switching it and moving on if it's a negative thought. So that is a strategy that I now use with children. And so
So are you still teaching them? Or you
no,
speak now? You're a professional speaker, right?
yeah,
This is awesome. Quick question, because as I mentioned earlier, we've gone through dyslexia diagnosis, just, having to get a scribe and literally seeing the difference between without a scribe and with a scribe, the two different results of tests. Um, in your book, do you feel that there's an application or maybe even a secondary book that approaches other challenges? Because language is essential. Language is like, if we look back to before we were writing and distributing everything, who was the most valuable person amongst the kingdoms? Was the bard, the person that went village to village and shared the stories. The power of language is literally, I mean, we can see power language that's used for bad and power language that's used for good, but when you feel that you have no power within language,
yes.
that's where the real challenge is. Do you see that there's opportunity here to expand the application of what you're talking about?
Yes, because interestingly enough, the title, Brave Loyalist Learns English, it wasn't so much that I was a second language learner because even though I was, because Spanish was my primary language, by the time I went to kindergarten, I was the youngest of six. So all my siblings spoke English. I spoke English. So it wasn't that as much as this was, I think it was just the newness, new teacher, new classroom. And, when you're saying your alphabet, you go A, B, C, D, F, G, and then there's a pause. And then, and then probably nerves just hit me. But so the book really is more apt of the theme or the message of the book is whatever you're learning whether it's math, whether it's playing football or playing basketball, whatever you're learning and you're being challenged, that's when that voice is going to pop up.
Yeah.
So, so it's that one message in the book, of course, she's having to get up in front of the class and read. And so her voice right away, she first says to herself, I don't know my ABCs, I can't read, I can't write, and I certainly can't speak in front of the classroom. So it's like a lot of,
Presentation. What is that rule? More people would prefer to be in the coffin than give the eulogy?
I rather done. I rather die than so all of those, I can't do this, I can't do that.
Yeah.
It's that same recording that is going, you know, through your head that, "No, you can't. No, you can't. No, you can't." So whatever it is that you're tackling, whether it's learning math or learning a game or whatever, a sports or piano. Right now, I'm
Yeah.
trying to learn how to play piano. I swear. I sit down in front of the piano, and the minute I sit down, that recording starts. Just, "You should have learned piano when you were young. What are you doing now? You're too old. You need to let it go. You need to get something else." I had to tell myself, "Learn how to play piano. It's easy and fun. It's easy and fun. It's easy and fun." I mean, just to stay there and practice, because otherwise I would be out of there in seconds.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I like to, I will admit I like to stay in my comfort zone. Um, and yeah, I watched somebody ride a bike. I have no coordination whatsoever. I look like I remember the Seinfeld show, and Elise is out there, or what's her name? What was the?
Oh my god.
It was like it was like Elise, but that's not correct.
No, it's not.
But basically, she's out doing the dancing right?
How does
That's
that
me riding a bike. That's me riding a bike. That's me actually doing anything that requires a coordination.
That's my favorite
So
she
El-
Elaine. Elaine.
Elaine, that's it. Elaine. I am the Elaine of coordination, let me tell you. Um, let's talk about like reader's reward. Who do you feel is best suited for the book? And how would you like what do you want the reward for the person who is actually absorbing the book?
So, and it's kind of interesting that, I mean, here I wrote a children's book and I was thinking for first, second, or third grade. Now use this book for middle school, high school counselors, teachers, because the message is a message that is applicable to all of us, no matter what your age group is. The message is that we all have that voice in us and we all need to recognize it and push through it to get to the other side. So so the reward comes, from the fact that if we just listen to that voice, recognize it and say, "Oh, okay, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to keep me safe. You wanna make it easy for me, but you know what? I need to push through this. I'm gonna stick with it and just keep going, and the reward you come out on the other side. Eventually, you learn it, right? Eventually, you learn whatever you're trying to learn if you just stick with it. So the reward, of course, is you eventually get to the finish line. It may not be overnight, but you eventually get there. You just have to push through it.
You just have to push through it. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you could wrap our chat up in my favorite 9 words, when you read, you will learn, so you can. Can you wrap that up for us?
Sure. When you read, you will learn that if you're being challenged, that little voice will pop up. That if you just reframe your thought, you will learn to push through and you will come out on the other side.
Come out feeling a little bit stronger, a little bit happier.
Pretty
Absolutely.
feeling pretty good about yourself when you finally learn something, right?
Absolutely.
Like writing a book,
Absolutely.
stick with it.
Armida, can you tell us a little bit about your speaking and what you do and how you come into schools?
Yes. So initially, I wanted to read the book to everybody. I didn't want anybody to read my book to the children. I wanted to be the one to read it to them. I soon realized that I couldn't possibly read to, I mean, all the kids, right? Or all the classrooms. But then it occurred to me that it became more powerful when I could in service teachers. So I literally read my first grade book to teachers, and they actually find themselves going back to their own personal experience and their own challenges. And it really hits home for them. So then they walk away with a book in hand and having connected to the story personally. Then they go back to the classroom, they read the book to their children, and they share their personal experience. And what happens is then that opens up the conversation for the children to share with the teachers what their fears are. And that bond is amazing. And so even though I miss reading the book myself to the children, I know that because when I would go in and read it, it was just, they would never see me again. And they would share their heartfelt, their fears and their thoughts with me. And then I couldn't do anything with it. I would walk away and that was the end of that. But the teachers, that bond that the teachers create with the child, when the teacher puts himself in the vulnerable position of saying, I know what it feels like. This happened to me.
Yeah.
That changes the dynamics of the teaching relationship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I appreciate you not heading to a golf course and deciding that even though you've, can you've had a long career in teaching, you've come all this way that the journey's not done yet. And I really appreciate you sticking around because the legacy part of our world is not on a golf course. It's in the trenches, it's in the schools, it's in our communities. And you are definitely working to build the community better, one student, one person at a time.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All righty. Thank you, everyone, for joining. It's yet another amazing chapter in this book of Kim Talks Books. I'll see you next time.